See Rich typing. We're about to get going here. Janet, Doug, and Michelle, if you have any questions, feel free to add them. I will kick us off here shortly. Okay, it is 12 o'clock on Monday, November the 12th. Welcome to the Q&A session for part 2 of Bill Holland's Cracking the New Job Market presentation that we had last Thursday. Hopefully everyone enjoyed that and gained from the content. We do have some questions to cover. We see, Rich, that you've added one. That's great. Bill, why don't you kick things off with your own comments on where you wanted to start, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa. And again, thanks to those of you who have joined us. This is your session intended to make sure you are getting what you need. I repeat, and you've heard me say this time and time again, it's not about me, it's about you and what you need to be effective in the new job market, or what you need to crack the new job market successfully. There are a couple of things I want to add, that this is more than a job search methodology. It's a way of approaching your entire career. And I encourage you to look at it that way. But there is a mistake that keeps coming up time and time again that I want to walk you through just a little bit. And that is, it has two components to it. One, I'm getting the impression, and I've seen this before, that there are a number of people who think they don't need to use the book as kind of a reference source, as a workbook, and you really do. And that's not a plea for you to buy the book. It is a plea for you to understand that in order to get the most out of it, you really need that book next to you, be it from the library, be it borrowed it from a friend, or however you get it. There is no shortcut around that book. And then the second thing is, it's a book that was cut down from a lot of pages down to the bare minimums, because that's the way the publishing business works. You know, if you say you're going to do a book that has 45,000 words in it, they don't want you to hand in a book that has 55,000. They really do want you to stay within the confines of what you agree to. And in order to do that, almost every phrase in the methodology has purpose behind it. And people sometimes skip over that, especially in chapter 2, and I'm encouraging you not to do that. There are a number of people who think that they can go and learn how to tweak their resume. They can get the keywords and somehow or other just insert them in their resume, and that's it. That's kind of all they need to do. I'm going to tell you now, nothing can be further from the truth. And the process in this case is as important as the outcome, because you need to know where to start. And you really don't start with your resume. You start with what the employer is looking for. And once you understand that, and you juxtapose that against what you've accomplished, you go in and infuse your accomplishments with value. And that value comes from two places. One, how you quantify and qualify what it is that you've done. But the second infusion of value is describing what you've done in a context that makes sense to the employer, in a context that is of value to the employer. And that context is what they are asking for in the position description. So I just wanted to kind of get that out to say it again, because the tendency is to take shortcuts. And you can be very successful with the shortcut and get a lot of interviews. But it falls apart when you go in for the interview and they stack you up against other people who are more focused on what it is that the company's trying to accomplish. So that's why I would ask you to pay closer attention to the book. Now, Rich has a question. Where is the best place today to see job descriptions and positions? It seems to me that's two questions. If you know what you are applying for, then you will get a position description from that advertisement of the job. I keep hearing there are some jobs that don't offer position descriptions. Those are not very smart companies, and I'm not sure I would want to work for them. So once you find a job that you are applying for, whether you find that job off of a job board, which is a distinct possibility, whether you get it off the website of the company that's advertising the job, whether you get it from a headhunter, wherever you see an advertisement for a job, that's where you get the position description. The second part to that question, I think, is really a question about where are the jobs being posted. And they are being posted all over. And where you look is a function of what kind of a job you are applying for. And there are no hard and fast rules. Some jobs are advertised on job boards. Sometimes they're advertised in just a variety of places. Wherever they are advertised, that's where you need to look. Go to a search engine, insert in that search engine open positions, and describe the position you're looking for, and I'll bet you something comes up. Janet in Pennsylvania. You know, Janet, you do better to remind me, because I don't know if some of that went away in my head. So I would appreciate it if you would remind me of what you asked, because I can't get out and go to my my email out of this. So if you would help me, that would be helpful. I do remember the conversation.
Bill, I have an additional question that came to me relating to job titles on a resume that other employers might not understand. For example, if you've worked for state government and you've been something level 14, do you stick with that title on your resume, or do you try to make it comparable to something more?
I would try to make it comparable to something more well known, but be sure at some point along the way you let the organization know that you've taken that liberty. Because what they're going to do when they get that, they don't know. And Lisa, you and I had an example of that in our corresponding offline with some people who had a job description that made absolutely no sense, or job title that made no sense in the larger society. And so we encouraged that person to use a job title that was more descriptive of what they actually did, but to make sure, and again, I emphasize this, make sure at some appropriate point in time you say to whoever you need to say it to, understand that I used words to describe my job, or I invented a job title to describe my job rather than the one the bureaucracy uses. Most people, especially HR types, will understand that if they've dealt with government jobs at all. And so just, understand that. And then Doug has, Lisa, is that, do you want me to comment more on that, or is that enough?
I think that's enough. I think that's good. I love Doug's question.
Why don't you go ahead and lead us through the questions, Lisa?
Yep. So Doug's question is, how do you handle the interview when you find out the job description doesn't match what the real job is? And because perhaps the hiring manager borrowed the job description from another department, or maybe it's what they used when they looked 5 years ago. So what do you do when you realize that in meeting the company, it's totally different?
Okay. And that happens more times than I'm comfortable admitting. And what you do is to play it straight ahead. That is, that's the job you've prepped for. That's the job you're interviewing for. Continue to interview. If you recall the 7 rules of negotiating, and I think rule 1 was never turn down a job that's not offered. You have plenty of time to say to yourself, this is a different job, I really don't want it, or this is a different job, I need to find more out about it. This is a different job, I wonder what that has to say about the company that's advertising the job, because that's really sloppy work. But you have plenty of time to ask and answer those questions. Play it straight, interview. If you get a job offer, you can always turn it down. But whatever you do, don't turn down a job offer that's not offered. And that's one time in which you might feel compelled to do that. But I would say play it straight.
Doug, if you would like more elaboration on that, let us know. If that helps, let us know. Oh, I see Doug typing. Janet's question is, older job seekers, do we put our MSU graduation year on our resume or not?
Yes, Janet, I do remember that. I thank you for jogging my memory. And the answer is, it depends. I would tend to put it on the resume just simply because when you leave it off, it's just like a functional resume. There's a discussion on one of the appendices about a functional resume. It raises questions and people get suspicious and they suspect you're trying to hide something, and maybe in fact you are. But I think by and large, if you put yourself in a position to demonstrate your value, age becomes less of an issue, because what they want is someone who can do the job. And I might add, also for older workers, being of a certain age has certain advantages that you might want to explore in more detail. And that is for people who are on Social Security or who don't need benefits. And hopefully that'll go away with Obamacare. But that could be an attractive consideration for a company that is looking to control its cost of labor. So there are certain advantages besides experience that come with being older. But the most important attribute, of course, is the ability to create value. And you have to put yourself in a position to do that. And if you think putting your age on your resume, in essence, by listing the years in which you graduated, is going to be a problem, don't include it. But I can tell you the downside to that is it's going to create suspicion. And people are going to think you are less than forthcoming. It is a judgment call on your part. I would say go and try to find out what the general practice of the company or organization is when it comes to hiring older workers. Call the HR department and find out. And of course, they'll give you a legal answer. But ask other people in the company, and you will get some sense of whether or not it is to your advantage to camouflage dates of graduation. And I would say to you that once you start that search of trying to find companies that for whom age is not an issue and maybe even an advantage, you will gladly put that on your resume. So you do what's necessary, short of telling an out-and-out lie, do you do what's necessary to get past that first screen?
Yeah, thank you for that, Bill. And I just want to add, I completely agree with the point that when you're leading with your values, some of that other stuff fades away. And when we don't have that value message really on target, and we're doubting our own value, perhaps because we're worried about our age or our gender or the gaps we may have had in our employment, some of that concern is transferred to the employer at times. Do you ever feel that, Bill?
Oh, absolutely. I think you put it precisely as it is. Figure out what you lead with. And once you get good at leading with that, a lot of these other things are blunted. And that's very important. I remember when women first started entering the professional workforce, and it took people a while to understand that not only do women serve as head of household, or their incomes are as important as everybody else's income, but after a while you figure out that that was a tremendously underemployed group. And if you wanted to find talent, available talent, rather than hiring women because you couldn't get around it, you hired women because it was an absolute advantage. And I'll tell you, in a sense, I hate to admit it, but my career received an incredible boost when I figured out that women could do certain things better than men. And let me give you one. I've time and time again, I've sat in an audience, and I said, you know, all the women out there who are married, raise your hand. So all the guys out there who are married, raise your hand, and we get a good mix. Now I'm going to share with you the biggest lie that's ever told, and I'm willing to bet you most of the women in the audience will not only understand what I'm saying, but they will agree. And the biggest lie ever told is that men can multitask. Most men are terrible multitaskers. And many women, on the other hand, are great multitaskers. And when you say that, you hear this chuckle. Sometimes there's even a roar go up in the audience, because men like to delude themselves into believing they are great multitaskers and they can do anything. And the truth of the matter is, most men can concentrate on about one thing at a time, and that half the time. So after a while, it gets to be very funny to watch that go on. So go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, I have to confess, I did giggle a little bit on that one, Bill. So Janet has another question. When you have employers, perhaps from earlier on in your career, say the first 10 years of your work experience, that don't exist any longer, does that change your strategy with including them on your resume? Perhaps they'll be harder to find, references harder to get. What do you think?
Well, I think it's a non-issue. If you keep your resume to a couple of pages, and the early years of your experience need to be put in summary form anyway. And if you are young enough in the market where you need to mention a company that no longer exists, mention it. The fact that it doesn't exist doesn't mean you didn't have the experience. Now, so whatever works in terms of listing those companies. The key question isn't whether or not they still exist. The key question is, do those experiences represent did you create value in those experiences such that they become important to the consideration of your application? That's the question, not whether or not they still exist. Let's assume for a moment that they don't. Well, if you put someone down as a reference, well, let's take it a little bit differently. If someone is going to look at your resume and they want contacts in the company that no longer exists, and you don't know where those people are, then when it comes to that part of the discussion or the interview or whatever have you, just say company no longer exists. Everyone understands that. It is literally no big thing. So you put down what you think you need to put down to demonstrate your value. And if the company no longer exists, at the appropriate time you just say so, and you don't know where those people are. That happens all the time. So it really is no big thing.
Okay, thanks for that. Janet, let us know if you need any elaboration on that. Another question from Janet. How do you protect your privacy when you're using social media, when you're using LinkedIn for a job search?
I'm assuming that you don't want everyone to know you're looking for a job. And if that's true, then you obviously don't want to use social media to, in fact, uncover in an open way job leads. And you are limited. You can pretend to be doing research on other things, but you can't go out there and say, I'm looking for a job, because that's going to boomerang back. It is best if your current employer doesn't know you're looking, you have to look for a job more discreetly. There is the presumption, however, that you have more time because you're not in dire straits of being unemployed. If you're unemployed, then it is no problem to let people know you are looking for a position. So it works out. The greater the sense of urgency, in a sense, that is, you're unemployed, the more you are able to advertise your job search. And the more secure you are, that is, you have a regular income, the less you want to be open with that information. And it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is.
Thank you for that. I've got some questions that I'd like to throw in. Those of you who are with us today are welcome to add some more to chat. But talking about sense of urgency and how that might change your approach, we've talked a lot through this series about understanding what an employer wants and what value you bring. I still meet so many people, though, who don't seem to know what they want to do. In fact, they don't think they have time to focus on what they want to do, what they would enjoy, what they might be particularly good at, because they are in such an urgent situation of finding a job that their focus is more on just applying to whatever they see and hoping something gels there. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts. A big mistake that many people make is they kind of let the cat out of the bag, that they're not sure what they want to do. And companies today, they don't see it as their job to help you figure that out. That's not what they're there for. And so if you don't know, don't expect companies to help you figure that out. They're just not going to do it. They don't have time. And that makes sense. And I can't say to you that the more time you take figuring out what you want to do, the better off you're going to be. But I can say this, that it is important for you to figure out what you're good at. Because when you do that, you're in a better position to offer value. And there is a certain level of reward that comes from the feedback you get for a job well done. And when you get that feedback, you'll be surprised at how much you like what it is that you do. In other words, people get the passion for their work backwards. I encourage people not to put that first. Put first what you do well. And to the extent that you get rewarded for it, you'll like what you do a heck of a lot more. And the example that I always use is Paula Deen. I don't want anyone to think that I'm a big Paula Deen fan. I am not. I usually cannot stand her on television until I read a little more about who she was and how she got to where she is. Paula Deen was a single mom, 2 kids, a no good ex-husband, evidently. I don't know that for sure, but that's the way it sounds, who couldn't feed those kids. Plus, she was deathly afraid of crowds. So what she did, she knew she had one talent, and that was the ability to prepare food. So she took her boys. I think this is in Charlotte. I'm not sure where it was. Maybe in South Carolina. And she prepared box lunches for the local business community, and she peddled those, had the kids go down and peddle those lunches at noontime. And she got to be very well known for what it is that she did. And so when you see her on television, it looks like this woman just loves to cook and prepare food. And the truth of the matter is she found something she was very good at. And she got a lot of positive feedback, let alone a way to make a living. And she converted that into a way of life for herself. Now, she may love doing food. She may not love doing it. I don't know. But clearly, necessity was the mother of invention here. And that's some of what I'm suggesting to you. Figure out what you're good at. You'll find it a lot easier to create value and to get your mojo going than if you do it the other way around. So that's kind of my advice, and I think it works.
Oh, I agree. But I'm thinking just specifically about individuals when I've been the interviewer, where I've wondered if, boy, if I even give this person this job, are they going to be miserable? Am I going to be making their day, or am I going to be sealing their fate? The goal to many seems to be proving they can do the job, but that's where it'll stop. And sometimes it doesn't go to the point of showing the employer they want the job and would be the best candidate of the others who have proven they can also do the job. And I don't know how we solve that, quite honestly.
Well, and you're right. One of the biggest mistakes I ever made on a job, it was a job I really wanted. It was either that job, which was a major job with a major company, or I'd have to relocate, which I ended up doing. And the guy told me, just one of the few times I got feedback, he said we really wanted you for the job, but we didn't offer it to you because I had been told by somebody, I can't remember, don't be over anxious, don't make it look like you have choices. And so I told the guy, when he presented the opportunity to me, I said, well, I'm not sure I really want this job. Well, that was stupid. I mean, it was absolutely stupid. People want to be around others who are going to enjoy what they're doing. And I think an important part of that is treating the job as something that's important to you. It's okay to demonstrate that you want to work someplace. And it's not okay to appear to be neutral about that. And it took me, I learned the hard way, and I would encourage you that if you can't go into a job or into an interview with that kind of frame of mind, think twice about whether or not you want to take the interview at all. But Lisa, you're absolutely right. I think that's an excellent question, and I have personal experience with having blown a great job offer. So
I think that's a wonderful example. Another question revolves around discussing mistakes in an interview. This is a time where we feel we have to be amazing candidates for companies, and they're asking us questions to get an idea of what types of mistakes we've made and how we've handled them in the past. How do we bring that up? We hear that, tell me about your weaknesses, and well, I overcommit too much, or I can never say no, or I'm so detailed that sometimes I drive people crazy. So we hear people doing those types of answers versus genuine mistakes or weaknesses.
Yes. This is again why the exercises are important. Go back to looking at that job description, all questions are opportunities, or the answers to all questions are the same. They are opportunities to talk about things of interest to the employer. And I'll tell you about some research I just did for my next book. I just finished chapter 5 of that, and I only got 3 more chapters to go, so I'm very excited about that. So that book is almost in the bag. But in doing this research, and this is for entry-level positions, the concepts are the same for other positions as well. I said, what would happen if I looked at, just randomly, 16 job descriptions? What would they tell me about what companies are looking for in entry-level candidates? And I went through 16 job descriptions that I picked off the internet. And 8 of them were for technical jobs, 8 of them for non-technical jobs, and they were from IBM and other companies. And here's what I found. There were 5 characteristics that were listed on every job description. Leadership, not the ability to, I don't think it was multitasking. Leadership, decision making, customer focus, and whatever the other things were. And then there were several other characteristics that were mentioned on at least 8 of the job descriptions. So I said to my entry-level audience of parents and students, I said, what this says to you is that as you go through college, you ought to develop an expertise in these areas, because there is a very high probability that companies are going to be looking for that. And you will have a profile that puts you in good competition. All right, so we kind of fast forward, and someone says, "Tell me about yourself. Tell me about your strengths." Oh, one of the characteristics was the ability to improve, the ability to get better. And someone, you're in an interview, and they say, "What is your greatest weakness?" That is nothing other than a question about your ability to improve. Willingness to understand who you are, what you're good at, what you're not good at, and what you need to improve on. So it's not about weaknesses. It's about areas or examples where you have recognized a problem and you've done something about it. So it's really a question about your strengths. So when someone says to you, what is your greatest weakness? How do you talk about that? You look at what they're interested in. They're interested in project management. And you say something like, when I first started in business, which is 100% true of all of us, project management was not my strongest suit. That's something over time I've worked at. I've gotten a lot better at. I said, no. I mean, what is your weakness today? Well, I'll tell you what. Project management for me, even though it is a source of strength, is always a work in progress. Because my mantra is, I want to get better. So you see how you handle that? You first of all, you talk about things in the context of what they're interested in. And everything represents areas that you have done something about. And once you really become familiar with that position description and what they're asking for and what they're interested in, when they ask you that question about weaknesses and all that, you should just have horns going off and celebrating an easy question, because because you know what you're doing and you know what they're interested in. I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. I love that answer. This one's came actually through email, and I think it's a wonderful question for you, Bill. Some of the folks who have been participating in this series have been at a job hunt for a while, and they've applied to numerous positions, many positions they were excited about, companies that were top on their list. And after hearing your content, they're realizing they may not have gotten the value position right. How do you go back to an organization you've already introduced yourself to and had an engagement of sorts with and get a do-over?
Well, first of all, that actually is a great question. Because last week in the United States, there were 3 million jobs that were open, even though nobody's hiring, right? And 40% of those jobs have been open for 6 months because employers say they just can't find the right combination of skills. Translate it, nobody really is looking at those job descriptions and really focusing in on what it is that they're asking for. And incidentally, that's why when you learn how to do this and you learn how to do it well and you practice it and you quit trying to take shortcuts, there's a very good chance you're going to be able to get some response to the organization almost immediately. But the question is, after you've gone in and it hasn't worked out, how do you resubmit? And there are a couple of ways. If the job is filled, you look for an opportunity to apply for the next opening. That's number one. But secondly, and think about this for a minute, you reapply with a different resume that's more superbly focused on the value they are asking you to create. What's the worst that can happen? They'll say, this guy applied before. They're rejected. Well, I don't think so. You have as good a chance as you had before, if not better, with that new resume and a new approach and new insight of getting serious consideration. Hey, go for it. These are serious times and times of hard. Don't let the fact that you've applied before keep you from applying again. And so, go for it. The closest example I have to that is a woman, I think I told you about this before, Lee Fowler, whose husband is a cop in Chicago. When I asked her, I said, well, you don't have a master's degree. What do you do when companies say, you don't have a master's degree? If you have a master's degree, to apply for this job, you need a master's degree. And she says, I ignore them. And I let my credentials speak for themselves. And so what do you do if you've applied before? You ignore it and let your newly articulated credentials speak for themselves. You honestly have a reduced chance of getting considered. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But it's not a chance. It's not zero chance. And going in and reapplying for jobs that you may have blown it initially is good practice.
Yeah, I agree. I think where it becomes a mistake, and maybe that's too heavy of a word, is when you're resubmitting over and over again with the same pitch, and it's still getting rejected over and over again. Where a year later, I see a question just got locked. A year later, we're submitting the same resume that the company saw the first time. So I like that approach. Let me see if I can. Janet has a question. I filled out an online application last night after completing the initial part. Last 4 employers and checked to agree they may be contacted. It continued that I had to complete a 6-page survey before finishing the app. The survey was a personality attitude test, not aptitude, with 100 questions. Question 99, I really did not want to answer. What is the answer for when they ask if a coworker breaks the rules, what do you do? Boy, this is a lot. If it does not affect me, I don't do anything. I get upset, but I don't do anything. I get very upset, but I don't do anything. I think that was I think you get where this is going, Bill.
Yeah, well, that's pretty intrusive, isn't it? And I have a couple of rules around that. One is, if I'm willing to answer the survey, then I answer it. I don't fake it. I don't do any of that, because I'm either a good fit in their eyes for the job or I'm not, and it's not worth trying to finagle and figure out what the right answer is or the answer that will give me the most leverage, if I in fact decide I want to answer that. I think it takes a lot of nerve and a lot of gall to ask that many questions, and depending on my level of desperation, I may choose not to answer it. And I also might choose to send them a note saying, I object, for whatever good that's going to do. And the good it would do for me, for those of you who know me, is it'll make me feel better, but that's about all. It's not going to change the outcome. That's one of my characteristics over time, is that I am not the most politic people. There are some things that I don't put up with very well. My brother is absolutely the same way, so I don't feel so bad, because I think we come by it naturally. But I remember he was with a very, very, very large and prestigious firm, and they said to him, you know, we're going to give you a promotion. We want you to know that, but we're not giving it to you now. And he just said, if you don't give it to me now, then I'm leaving. And he left. I mean, it's just, you know, not, you know, can I afford to do this? Not how much money will it cost me? Some people are like that. I don't, and I'm certainly like that. I don't think it is the best way to be, because I think you pay a dear price for that. And over time, I have paid a price for that. But that's the way I am, and there's not much I choose to do about it. And so that's just it. So I think you have to decide. But if you go forward, my recommendation is, hey, just answer the question. Don't fret. Don't fake it. Don't do any of that stuff. Just answer it.
Yeah, I agree, Bill, and I think what can be liberating for job seekers is when they realize that this isn't just a one-way decision process. This is a business decision for both parties involved, and we give the employer this amazing power because they're writing a check, but that's their currency in the deal. Their currency is the money. The job seeker's currency, which is always going to involve more input than the employer's, is the actual accomplishments and contacts and knowledge and sales that they bring to the table that's going to make this company better. And we've been left to feel, I think, in this economy that we just kind of have to keep doing all these dances in the hopes of getting noticed. And I hope the job market has recovered enough that some of that can go by the wayside. I don't know.
For people who get good at creating value and articulating the value they create, for those people, the job market has never been bad. Remember that there are people walking around out there who lose a job today and get another one a week later, just simply because they have developed a reputation for creating value. And they are very flexible.
And you know, what's interesting to me, Bill, is a number of the people who I meet are frustrated because they say that I've never had to look for a job this way before, meaning, of course, the job boards and social media and such. But they were used to getting jobs based on their reputation. And I think it's been the disconnect in finding ways for to have a reputation in this world that's global. It's not just a community reputation. You might need that reputation to travel further for you. So
one of the very difficult things for people to do, and I go back to it's quote, not your fault, and that is to adjust your mindset to what's required in the new job market. That's hard. It is not easy. That's why I say to people that that it's one thing to learn how to tweak your resume. It's another thing to learn how to tweak your mindset. And you'll know that you have begun to arrive when there's a job opening, and the first thing you think about is, what are they asking for, rather than how fast do I get my resume in. And because it's the what are they asking for that is the path to career survival and prosperity. And if you learn to walk down that path consciously and perhaps a little more slowly, you'll like the results.
Love that point. Question was asked in the previous session relating to how can you find out why a company is trying to why a company has a position open, whether it's a new position or replacement. What's the best way to go about finding that out?
If you get into the interview, the best way to find it out is to ask them. Help me understand why this job is open. It's as simple as that. They will either hem and haw and won't tell you, or they'll come right out and tell you. If it's before you get to the interview stage, that's their business. And it might be nice for you to know that the person who occupied it before was fired, or it's a high turnover position and no one's been able to succeed in it. All those things are valuable things to know, but they're going to be hard for you to find out unless you know someone inside the company that's familiar with the situation. And I might add, while doing intelligence work and asking people inside the company is important, be careful about accepting other people's impression as gospel. Because what they think and believe is a function of a lot of variables, some of which may suggest to you that their impressions won't be the same as yours. So I just think you need to be careful. Anything else?
Bill, I lost a big chunk of what you were saying. I'm not sure if everybody else did, but you were talking about not taking... I think you're fading in and out on us a little bit.
Okay, I could be tapping my desk. Is that better?
Yep, that's better. Can you just repeat that point in terms of not taking other people's opinions as the gospel about an organization?
Well, yeah, I started with the point that the best way to find out why the job is open, if you're in the interview, is to ask them. And more times than not, they'll tell you. You know, the last person didn't succeed. The more detailed information about that you might find helpful, like has it been a high turnover position? Is it whatever have you? That information will be more difficult to find out, because if it's before the interview, it's kind of like none of your business. But a way to get around that, if you know people inside the firm, is to ask them. And the only thing I said is be careful about accepting other people's interpretation of what the company is up to, because their perceptions will be influenced greatly by how they themselves are doing. And so just be careful, that's all.
Yeah, I agree. I know when I was functioning as a third-party recruiter, one of the things that I as a recruiter would ask a company is, can you give me some insight on, for those who have had successful careers here, what's been some of the common themes for individuals who haven't stayed long with the organization or who haven't been a fit? Have you noticed any specific trends with that? And some of the answers that came from there were really helpful in terms of figuring out whether or not the person who I was submitting was going to have a chance of landing the job. Do you think, what would you say would be the strategy difference in selling yourself to an organization if you know it's a new position versus a position that's simply being replaced?
I think I understand the question. Are you asking, is there a difference in approach if you are replacing someone versus if the position is new? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Do you think it changes how the value position that you're putting forward, or how you attack your interview?
Here's how it might change. If the other person did not succeed, I think your question is spot on. That is, talk to me about what kinds of people in this firm succeed and what kind of people tend to turn over more quickly. And in fact, without asking the specific question about this job, that question will get an answer about that job. Because that's just a great, great, great question. And so you might want to be sure you ask that. And what you can do with that information, of course, is that you can begin to do your own internal calculus of what do you bring to the party that other people might not bring. But then you also need to be realistic. And being realistic is hard. And I'll give you an example. If the job requires a great deal of political savvy, and you have a sense that that is not one of your strong suits, you probably aren't going to be in that job very long. And in fact, as it turns out, political savvy is one of the most difficult things to teach. Or, as many staff jobs require, if you find out that that job is one in which you have to influence without authority, and that's not something you do very well. You see, there are some people who are very good at command and control situations. But increasingly, our society and our jobs are moving in the direction of influencing without authority, in which you have to convince people, without getting into the political thing. And keep in mind, I grew up with Scott Romney, who was on the board of Michigan State, and when his younger brother Mitt ran for president, I mean, one of the things you know about business people, especially very successful business people, is that they, unless you work for IBM, they tend to be more command and control than they do anything else, and that's a very difficult environment for them to adjust to. And so if you are a command and control person and you have difficulty influencing without authority, you need to do some kind of self-assessment to figure out if this is a job for you. But given where you are, I would say that most of you are better at that than a whole bunch of business executives I know. Because nothing will ruin you faster on influencing without authority than having authority.
I'm giggling, but I completely agree with your point. We're getting to 8 minutes left in this hour. If those of you who are here, if you have a question you want to log, please do so. I have one more question that actually relates to references. You spoke in part 2 about coaching your references and how to decide which references to use for specific positions or what you're trying to do. Can you shed any light on how to get in touch with references in a comfortable way that perhaps you've neglected, that you need from perhaps a while ago, or maybe there was a burned bridge involved? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and they are, my thought is simpler than the reality. So I offer this suggestion, recognizing that it's not quite this simple. Take the example of someone you haven't been in touch with and all of a sudden you need them. And you know it would have been better had you been in touch with them all along. The truth of the matter is most of us are in that situation. Swallow your embarrassment and go ahead and ask. You might be surprised at how easily they are willing, they offer to help you. The same is true of people that you didn't get along with, that you burned a bridge, you stormed out, and I'm certainly not going to mention any names, but I've burned not very many bridges. I've burned a couple, and much later in life decided that it would be good to reconnect with that person. I was very surprised at how willing they were to reconnect with. So if it's a situation that's burning in your mind, there's a good possibility they didn't see it quite that way, and the only way you're going to find out is if you ask. The worst that can happen is they'll turn you down. Well, that's a small price to pay, so go ahead and ask. And be appropriately, not so much apologetic as sincere in asking for or soliciting their support. People respond to that.
Michelle has logged the question. Most applications want to know if they can contact your previous supervisors. I feel saying no is a red flag, but I'm not sure he will provide a good reference for me. What is your advice? I have others who I'm confident will provide an excellent reference that I would refer to potential.
There are a couple of ways to handle that, and that's a pretty good question. If the question or the request is your most immediate past supervisor, whoever that is, you need to supply it. If the question is more generic than that, supervisors that you have worked for, then avoid the ones you don't want and use the ones you do. But if the question specifically asks for who was your last supervisor, then you got to supply that. And there's very little you can do about it.
Yeah, and I think it's tricky too for some individuals who found that they worked for a number of years for one particular supervisor. That person retired, was laid off, was terminated, who knows, and a new supervisor comes on that they work with for a short period of time, and then that's when their exit from an organization occurs. It's like, boy, this is tricky. I'd really like to use the supervisor who I worked with for a number of years versus this newer person who terminated me or who laid me off. Do you have any thoughts on that?
That one's easy. Yeah, Lisa, that one's easy. You go with the person you work with the longest in that case. And here's how you handle it. Someone says, who was your most immediate past supervisor? And you'll say, one I worked with for a very short period of time who didn't get to know me, but one I worked with for many years who does know me, and then sell them on the other one.
And it strikes me too that sometimes what the company's really looking for is sometimes they want a reference to get an idea of what you've done, and sometimes they're just looking for date verification. And it's just hard to tell what they're going for. Anybody else have any other questions? We've got 3 minutes left. I'm out of questions and going to turn the mic back over to Bill for his closing thoughts. If you have a quick question, I see Tony typing. Let's get him in there. And Bill, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, very good, Lisa. Before we get to Tony's comment or question, let me say that this is not the first time out of the box for me on this webinar, but it's the first time that I've been able to work through an alumni association. And I am particularly interested in how this worked for you. I'm interested in any suggestions you have for improving this. And I'm also, quite honestly, looking for testimonials in the way of a quote, or if you really liked it, that I can use going forward as I talk to other alumni associations. The question came up earlier about when will this webinar be ready for market? And the answer is it's ready for market right now. I'm in communication with a number of organizations that are thinking about buying this with their alumni associations. It was great for me to be able to donate it to my own alumni association as the first time out of the box. I've certainly gotten a lot out of it. It told me a couple of things. It told me that I knew the material as well as I thought I did. And gee, after 2 books and now writing a third, I guess I ought to know it. But the other thing that it continues to confirm is that people who get on the path to career survival and success really, when they pick up the methodology, it is a very powerful tool. And so I'm interested in what happens to you guys, and I'd like to know if you found this to be very helpful. This has been terrific for me.
Thanks. Appreciate those thoughts. It's been terrific for us too, and we have a great network of Spartans, and Spartans helping Spartans is where it's at, and we appreciate you helping us, and we'd love to help you back. Tony did get his question in here for us. What recommendations for IT workers?
That's a great question.
Yeah, with skills and advantage.
What recommendations for IT workers with skills in a vanishing technology? Should he get certifications in new technology even without practical experience? That happens to a lot of people, and it's more than just IT people. On my first book, way back in 2005, I interviewed the Associate Dean of the Engineering School at Northwestern University. And he said that one of the challenges that they had was that students were exiting Northwestern thinking they were engineers. And then they would get out in the field and find out that their skill sets were atrophying at a remarkable rate. And pretty quickly they were becoming irrelevant to the job market as new products, new technologies came. And it's the same as the marketing myopia thing. I don't know how many of you have read the #1 Harvard Business Review article in the history of articles. It's called Marketing Myopia. And the point it makes, and I'll come back to Tony in just a second, the point it makes is that the railroads went out of business or really hurt themselves because they misdefined who they were. They weren't in the railroad business, they were in the transportation business. And railroads just happened to have been one of the modes of transportation that people were using. And the people in the movie industry weren't in movies, they were in entertainment. And so the author was encouraging people to get away from marketing myopia. The same thing is being encouraged by the Northwestern to its engineers. You're not engineers, you are in the business of improving the lives of people. And as long as you stay in that business, there's a good chance your skills will migrate in the direction of relevancy. And in IT, the short answer is yes, absolutely take more classes, but define yourself more broadly than information technology. What is it that you do for a living? And what's behind that? Give yourself a chance to create value in whatever environment you find yourself in. And I would suggest to you that that's more than information technology. Certainly, Google is trying to be more than a data aggregation firm. And unless they figure that out, they're going to go out of business. And certainly, Apple Computer very quickly, at one point in time, became a music company. And very shortly thereafter, they became kind of a gadget company. They make gadgets that help people use technology. So I don't know where your skill set goes, but you clearly need to start talking to people, get licenses, do whatever you can, but think in terms of a broader set of concepts than just information technology.
Great note to end this on. Great question, Tony. And relevance is absolutely the name of the game. And having an idea that we're more than just one particular thing is important. Bill, we've really enjoyed this time with you. I can't say enough how much I appreciate the access that you've given those interested in this webinar series. We, of course, have had these open Q&A sessions. Your email has been buzzing with activity. My email's been buzzing with activity. So thank you so much for this. Those of you who are interested in participating in the survey and helping us with some sound bites for Bill, please make sure I have your email address. My email is lisap@msu.edu. You can see it in the chat section. If you've been receiving my email reminders for the webinar series, you're all set. Other than that, thank you for joining us. We have recorded all 4 portions, the 2 webinars with the 2 Q&A sessions. If you'd like access to those, you may also contact me for those recordings. Bill, any closing thoughts, or are you all set?
I'm all set, and thanks again. This has really been terrific.
Excellent. All right. Happy job hunting, everyone.